Welcome to Nelly Pod, the official podcast of the National eDiscovery Leadership Institute. Here, we bridge the gap between technology and the law, bringing you the forefront of electronic discovery. Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, your co-host and navigator through the evolving landscape of eDiscovery. With over 20 years at the junction of law and technology, I'm excited to help bring together leading experts and practitioners who provide a wealth of knowledge on electronically stored information.
And my name is Brandon Mack. I'm the co-host of our podcast. And with 2 decades of eDiscovery experience myself, I'm also thrilled to be able to participate in bringing you information and education around the world of eDiscovery.
NeLI is not just about discussions. It's about education and it's about collaboration.
Our guests, from judges to eDiscovery professionals, share insights that cater to all experience levels.
Whether you're looking for a broad overview or in-depth technical analysis, this podcast is your gateway to understanding and implementing effective eDiscovery practices.
It's important to note that while we engage with some of the brightest minds in the field, the opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individual guests and the host, and do not necessarily represent the views of their respective employers.
We're here because of our passion for eDiscovery and our commitment to providing free, accessible educational content to legal professionals everywhere. And welcome back to another episode of Nelly Pod, the official podcast of Nelly. And we're very excited. Joining us here in the Nelly Pod studio is Tessa Jacob. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tessa, it's great to have you here for a lot of reasons. And one of the things that we really want to delve into is understand more about your background, understand what you've been doing for Nelly, and also just really the greater legal community, because you have been doing a lot for the legal community. So maybe you could just start with us and tell us, who do you work for? What is your role over there? And a little bit how you got into the world of eDiscovery.
Okay. So I am a partner at Hush Blackwell. I have been there 30 years. I celebrated my 30-year anniversary in January,
Congratulations.
actually. Thank you. So when I started there, I was general litigator, like a lot of people were back 30 years ago. In about 2006, when the rule changes initially happened for the eDiscovery rules, we needed somebody to focus more on eDiscovery. I just happened to be an associate at a time that really enjoyed discovery. And so one of the partners asked me if I'd be interested, and that's kind of how I got into it. I basically built our team up from the ground up. Our team is now called Hush Blackwell eDiscovery Solutions. I've got, I think we've got 11 lawyers and about 16 case managers and tech people. So on the tech side, it's called litigation technology, which I oversee. And then I've got the attorney side. So built that team from the ground up. Since that time, I also teach at eDiscovery here at the law school. Robin joined me a couple years ago and we co-teach that class. So that's how I actually got involved with Nelly. I think Nelly started, and then the year later, I started teaching. And so the dean introduced me to Robin, which has been great professional relationship and great friendship. And she asked me to join the board, and that's how I got involved in Nelly.
So you've been in eDiscovery, really steeped in eDiscovery operations for quite a while now. So in the time that you've been spending in eDiscovery, what would you say are the most significant changes or evolutions that you've seen in the industry that you've had to deal with?
I mean, obviously technology, right? Like when I first used a database, literally the documents weren't stored on the database. We used it for coding and that was it. I can still remember when Hush Blackwell purchased the first database, somebody gave me a big book and said, here, figure it out. But it was just brand new. But technology changes, right? The improvements have been very quick and threading is the best example. I mean, I remember when we first got threading, everybody was kind of nervous to use it and it just quickly overtook everything. The use of technology assisted review. Again, I can remember, I think I was one of the first firms in the town to use TAR at the time, and then it just took off, right? So the technology changes have been really, really quick and massive. The other things is just, data, right? The size of the volume that we're dealing with. Our cases weren't always that big, and now standard cases, is over 100 gigs. And so that's a big change in learning how to deal with that from the firm's perspective to help save costs for clients. right, to be efficient. So looking at the new tools and dealing with data.
It's interesting when you talk about some of these technologies. So when you mentioned threading, for those who may not be familiar, you're talking about email threading,
Email
right?
threading, yeah, it
Right.
seems so basic now.
Right, it does. It does. Things like finding the most inclusive email so you don't have to read all the reads and the forwards, right? You have received over the years a lot of accolades for what you've done. So when you talk about that first day from getting that big book on how to use a database to you received an award as Relativity's Tech Evangelist of the Year a few years ago, what has been, I guess, the most significant professional achievement for you in all these years?
Yeah, I mean, a couple. I mean, obviously, building this team at Hush Blackwell, again, it was ground up. When we started, I think some of the partners were like, why do we need an eDiscovery team? And this, that portion of the case isn't that important to now. It is. It is one of the most significant parts of the case. And I love that we have this team that's a resource for all of our cases. And that team also, we educate, right? We do all the education for the firm. So that I think that's a big achievement. The class here, I've been teaching for now. It'll be my 8th year. And I love hearing from students that my class is very practical, right? It's not theoretical. We teach it like I teach the associates, like how to do eDiscovery in a case. And when they go away, they have a book of how to do this. And I've actually run into a former student in the building and saying, oh my gosh, I have the same book with me and I'm still using it. And so I love that. I think those are 2 big professional achievements. And then I think there's been 2 other ones that they were goals that I set when I got into this area and I was happy to achieve them. One was joining Sedona, the steering committee, right? Being asked to be on that steering committee. It's looking at Sedona from afar when I first started, it comprised of people that were the most knowledgeable in the area. And I was always like leaning towards them, getting advice from them. And so one day being asked to be on it, that was a big thing. I remember Judge Peck calling me and asking me, and I was just like, wow, okay. And then I think the next one would be Chambers recognition. Again, it's the group that is in Chambers recognition. Those were always people that I looked up to, and for years was trying to figure out like how do I get there? How do I learn as much as they do? And so to finally get that recognition was a big deal for me.
That's a lot that you've gotten done in the last several years in eDiscovery. When you're working, specifically talking about your work at Hush Blackwell now, what do you see as your biggest challenges that you deal with in managing a team, in educating the firm? There are a lot of different hats you have to wear in the role that you play. I wonder, what are the biggest things that keep you awake at night and challenge you in the field nowadays?
I mean, the volume of data is still a huge challenge, right? People think that you can press a little button and it's done quickly. Learning the new technologies in order to be as efficient as possible. And it's always changing. I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be searching email inside a client's environment, I would have been like, no, we're going to always pull it out. But now with Office 365, I do that a lot. But convincing clients, hey, that's the way to do it. I think so. The challenge for me always is how do I educate and sell what we can do, right? To our partners and to our clients, right? Like how do I let them know and convince them that this way of doing something is going to be the most efficient and the best way. And then there's also still challenges with really complicated data in cases is educating the judiciary, right? Like when I'm in front of a judge on a case, like how do we make our argument and how do we take something that can be very complicated, right? And distill it down so we can educate the judge so we can win our position.
I'm stuck in this notion, Tessa, that you have mentioned a couple of times where the key word that I've heard from your answer a few times is educate. And I love that. There's something about somebody who loves to educate, about being able to give back, that's truly special in my mind. Because it's not typical for somebody to just say, I want to go educate at UMKC Law School. I want to go educate with Nelly. I want to educate the associates and create this team that you've created at Hush Blackwell. What is your drive? What is your motivator to want to do this?
Well, I guess I would say, I mean, as a lawyer, that's really what we do, right? We educate, right?
Or we argue.
Yeah, we argue. But I've always been on the education side, right? The arguments that I've seen, and especially a lot of times the stance that people take and just arguing about everything doesn't usually win. And so for me, with my personality and the way I am, education and teaching people, I've always been able to convince people that way. And for me, it's always worked. And I think part of it is when I first got in the area of eDiscovery, I was a kind of a rules geek. So that part of it I understood. I didn't understand the technology at all, right? Like I was an econ and poli-sci major. Technology was, using my new iPhone, or at the time, I think I had a BlackBerry. I didn't understand that. So I had to learn a lot. And I really appreciated the people that were willing to help me learn. And a lot of that, I mean, I think I learned the most about technology from our own IT folks. I have the people that run our IT systems at the firm became people that were really willing to help me learn. If I had something new that I'd never addressed before, I'd email the CIO and say, hey, who at our firm knows X? I want to learn. And I appreciated that. And then on the flip side, I had somebody I worked with that wasn't good at educating and wasn't willing to. And it was really intimidating being on a call where there's somebody that was supposed to be on my side that wasn't willing to help me, right? That was, and so being in that position, I really decided that I've got to help people. So it doesn't help cutting them down. It doesn't help showing in a meeting that someone doesn't know anything. You're not going to convince them that way. So I've really taken it on myself that with this role in eDiscovery, dealing with partners of all, that are really excellent at all these different things. They may not know this area, but that's okay. That my role is to help educate them so they can sell it to their clients and they can sell it to the judge. And it's not for me to always be that person out front that's, getting all the glory, and that's okay. And so I've learned through my own experiences that's a better way to deal with people.
And it also seems like a better way just to make the firm better, make the environment of everyone you're working with better at what you're trying to execute. And it's also team building, to do that.
Exactly. And I guess what I would say is, the other thing that I've learned and I've convinced the firm is not every single litigator needs to understand all sorts of technology and every rule and nuance, right? That's what we're here for. We jump in and we can parachute in and help people. We're a resource for them. And it just makes our lawyers and our services that we provide to our clients much better because they've got us as a resource, and they don't necessarily need to spend all the time learning every nuanced detail involved in eDiscovery because they have our team. But when we provide education, I always want to make sure that people have the baseline they need so they can handle a case. But we're here for all the crazy different types of data, things like that.
So how do you handle that when you do find that specific litigator who wants to know everything? They want to see the book from beginning to end. You got handed that book around the first database. For those who have to be mentored into really strong eDiscovery professionals nowadays, how do you deal with that mentorship and that teaching inside the firm?
Yeah. So our group, so when I find a person that's really that interested, I try to convince them, hey, why don't you come and join our group, right? Because our goal is to have enough people in our group in all the various practice areas so that they can then handle the case. I can't be on every case. So, but as far as education, I mean, every month we meet and I pick a topic that we are going to get trained on, whether it's how do you analyze search terms in Nuix, how do you do Office 365 searches, to how do you review someone's ESI orders, like what are we looking at? So we do specific training, and then I also, every time I get a question from somebody at the firm or every time we have an issue, I make a note of it, and those are the things I address with them so they know what's going on.
So you talked a lot about this evolution of everything from, keyword searching, let's call it, to technology system review. We're now this weird era, I think, in eDiscovery where everybody is talking about AI, but in reality, what they're talking about is generative AI.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, and worth educating the listeners as well, AI has been around since 1956. And so, and AI has been inside of eDiscovery for a long time as well, starting with technology system review, email threading as a form of AI, etc. Where do you think we're going with eDiscovery now with generative AI? I know that some common platforms that are out there today are coming out with their beta versions of Gen AI. Boy, we really went through a weird phase in 2010 through 2012 trying to accept it. And still to this day, lawyers, unlike yourself, still tough to accept that there's this technology that's out there that will make decisions about responsiveness on a document, right? But now Gen AI is going to, save the day. What's your stance on that? How do you feel, and individually, not separately than your firm's position?
Yeah, I feel like I was personally an early adopter of TAR, but a lot of that had to do with those that were ahead of me in the industry, like Mara Grossman, right? Like there were people out there that had tested those products that really gave us the comfort we needed to use it, and then Judge Peck issued the opinion, and we were all great. Before that, I was kind of standing there going, I don't know if I want to be the first one to use it in the case. So that was there. We're not quite there, right, with generative AI. Like we have, you mentioned, there's several companies that are beta testing with different firms. As far as Sedona, we have a brainstorming group for the use of AI in discovery, which will soon, hopefully, we'll have a paper coming out. We've had some conferences that were just around AI. So it's all very new still, right? And so I think the only thing that what I personally do is we have one product that we have used at the firm, and I tested it, right? It's testing it, comparing it to human review, comparing it to TAR, because there's not anybody else as a team doing. I would love it if there was somebody out there, but even with the testing of TAR, I can remember going up to Mara at a conference saying, well, you guys keep talking about it works, it's great, but nobody's telling me what to use. Like, I need to know that. So that's what we have to do here too. Like, you have to keep trying it yourself, that rather than relying on it. I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be leaps and bounds of where we are with use of AI, and specifically generative AI for responsiveness review. I just don't think it's quite there yet. The things that are being beta tested, I'm waiting for those to come out to see, can we do it? Because right now, from what I've used, there's a lot of going back and human involvement in it as well. But I really try not to have technology aversion, where, you try something once, you're like, I'll never try it again, and which I think all of us lawyers really do have that. But hopefully in 10 years, it will really kind of change how we do discovery.
You say in 10 years. Do you think
probably before then?
Yeah. Well, that was my question.
I'm hoping it's next year, right? Before I retire, I hope.
I'm with you on that. And I wanted to ask, do you think that what we learned from the evolution of TAR will accelerate the adoption curve with what we're seeing with generative AI? That we kind of have a pattern of, how do you test these things? How do you ferret out what's wrong, what's right, what tools to use, and things like that? Can we use that as a framework for testing what this next generation of Gen AI tools can do for us, and therefore get there faster than we did last time?
Mm-hmm. The use of TAR in discovery really took off for two reasons, right? One was Judge Peck's opinion, that basically said that black letter, it works, right? Nobody has to worry about the technology, and then the improvement of validation and how we came about. But at the time, right before he wrote that opinion, Judge Waxy wrote a Washburn Law Review article about, do we need to do a Daubert analysis on the use on TAR, that technology? And basically, you can tell we didn't. We went the other way. But it was always interesting to me, because I'm like, how do we know that black box works, right? We've just been told that every technology is slightly different. I've used enough TAR tools to know all of them work a little differently. Are we prepared to go there with generative AI, right? And just say it works. And I've had this conversation with several federal judges. We asked this question on the judicial panel at the last Sedona conference. And what was interesting is, I think almost every judge said, no, we're not prepared. Because I think generative AI is just getting to another level of doing things. And so far, there's already been a lot of questions about, is it working correctly? Are there false readings? And I mean, all of those cases where we're seeing a lot of it had to do with research, right? Wrong cases that were made up. But because of that negativity and some of the issues they've seen, I think the judges are already saying, I'm not sure that I'm just going to say, yep, it works. You can use it in discovery. Definitely, you better tell the other side if you're using, is what we heard a lot. But already the judges, they're already questioning the use of it and does it work properly. So I think that's what's drawing it. Whereas when we were starting with TAR, we didn't have that. We didn't already have some issues that were being flagged. And so I think that's why the judges that have been asked that question are saying, yeah, no, I'm not comfortable saying you can use generative AI for discovery already. So, because everybody's like, well, you just have to do validation. But the judges, when asked, they were questioning it. And I think it has to do with the fact that the use of generative AI for a lot of things, right? The fakes out there, all of that is causing some of this worry, some of this negativity about it. Whereas we didn't have that with TAR. It was just, boom, it's been tested. Here, let's go.
When you're talking about the fakes, obviously you're talking about generative AI hallucinations,
Yes.
right? I wonder, with all of these hallucinations, it may be scaring some non-technologist lawyers, right, about the utilization of it. But to what extent, Tessa, do lawyers need to understand the black box of generative AI? When you're talking about validation, there's a lot to be said about understanding the algorithm, understanding the bias, understanding the transparency. And we're all bound by the rules of professional conduct, having the ethical principles in mind that we have to understand this new relevant technology, right, and the risks and the benefits thereof. But to what extent do we need to understand the black box in order to just use it? And when I say to just use it, it extends beyond just eDiscovery software. It goes to the research tools. It goes to general writing a memorandum, right? Because if we read the terms and conditions of some of these popular tools that are out there, it says that, whether or not you put client information in there or not, it's still going to use the inputs in order to learn off of it. What is your thought about lawyers really needing to understand the black box just to use it for common day-to-day functionality?
Well, I don't think every lawyer that uses it needs to understand everything about it, right? We just have to make sure that people that do understand it have tested it enough. Generally, I mean, we don't know. I don't know how a plane actually flies. I hope somebody does, right? I get in it. So I don't think we need to know, but you need to know the basics, right? You need to know some of the examples you gave, like is for this particular project, what is it? What is the AI, generative AI using? Is it sandboxed enough? Is it using things that I inputted for prior cases? Is it going outside the sandbox? When I give it a prompt, is it then prompting itself and making other prompts? How do I get access to that? So that at some basic level, you need to know. But, how it started and how it was built, no, I agree. You don't need to know all of that. But you definitely have to know some basics.
I feel like every conversation I've had about eDiscovery in the last 6 to 12 months finds its way to generative AI. It's the topic of the year for what we're talking about in eDiscovery. But what do you think that's overshadowing? What are the other developments that you see coming in the next year or two, or that we need to see coming in the next year or two, that we're not talking about right now, or not talking about anymore, because we're all so focused on generative AI?
Yeah. The way we communicate has changed so much in the last 10 years, right? Texting and emojis and all of that. I mean, I think the technology needs to come forward on some of that. I mean, the best example is dealing with phone data, right? And texting. It's still kind of the same way it's been. It hasn't changed. And we need to get better at that, right? And I'm hoping that people that are listening to this podcast, specifically the vendors that develop this, I'm still, like with my text, what we can get. I'm like, why am I still looking at the same spreadsheet? And I want to see better imaging. I want to be able to, emojis change and now you can develop your own ones, right? How do we deal with that? Now we've got phones that you can send a text and then you can take it back. And how do you deal with that? So there's a lot of technology that we're using, just that we've got, that our clients are using, the bad actors are using. We have to learn how to collect those better. We have to learn how to review those better. And so we need that technology. The technology needs to keep up.
It's interesting. It's sort of a back to basics almost, but as the technology advances, we have to remember the basics of how to be able to appropriately be able to collect. And, I think that we've been fortunate. We have seen a lot of different technology producers create some new software, but it always seems like maybe it's a step behind, right? Yeah. Every time Apple or Google or the Android, somebody changes something, it becomes a little bit more complex. Tessa, this has been great. As we round this out, I just want to close with one last question, talking about NeLI and your involvement. What really excites you about the NeLI conference? You've mentioned you mentioned the Sedona conference. There's some really great think tanks that are out there, but why are you so passionate about the NeLI conference, and why is it so different than others?
Yeah. So, Robin has done an amazing thing with NeLI, right? Like bringing the fact that NeLI has such a reputation now that we can attract the best and the brightest in this area, from judiciary to vendors to attorneys, to come to Kansas City for this conference is amazing. I remember the first time I attended, I was just astonished, right, that she put this together, and that now how far it's gone. So it's great for this legal community. The fact that you can get the best in the class education in Kansas City for, just in that, to me, is amazing that we can do that. And then the fact that, we do webinars with it, and it's all over, right? So I think just being able to access that education in the Midwest is amazing.
Well, Tessa, this has been a wonderful conversation. We want to thank you again for spending this time with us and sharing with us your experience and your thoughts on the industry, and giving us all some tips on how to look at some of the challenges that are out there for us as we go forward in eDiscovery. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for tuning in and listening.
If you've enjoyed our discussion and want to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite streaming platform. We're here to help you stay on top of the latest trends and developments in eDiscovery.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions about today's topic. Reach out to us via our social media channels or email us directly. Your feedback makes our program stronger and more attuned to the topics you care about in the world of legal technology.
Remember, all the resources and insights shared today are aimed at enhancing your practice and understanding of eDiscovery.
Join us next time on Nelly Pod as we continue to bring you expert knowledge and lively discussions. Until then, keep innovating, keep discovering, and keep pushing the boundaries of legal technology. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.